The future of Windows PCs is here. Copilot Plus laptops on Qualcomm hardware. We've seen Snapdragon chips in phones and mobile devices before, but now it's here for the everyman, and I decided that I wanted to take this Galaxy Book 4 Edge from Samsung through its paces when it comes to gaming. For the specs in this specific Galaxy Book 4 Edge, it is not the highest end Snapdragon X Elite chip that's out on the market. There is a faster one that's available in certain devices, but for the most part, a lot of the Snapdragon X Elite chips are going to be the 8100 variant, which is the same CPU of 12 cores, 42 megabytes of cache, but they have varying clock speeds and different graphics cards. So this is what you should expect from most Snapdragon X Elite chips, but not necessarily all of them. There could be some that are faster, because this one is clocked to only 3.4 gigahertz for the max multi-threaded frequency, and then its dual core boost is 4 gigahertz, whereas the X Elite 84-100 version actually has a 400 megahertz higher max multi-threaded frequency, 200 megahertz faster dual core boost, and 0.8 teraflops faster when it comes to the graphics card. But currently I have 4 different Snapdragon X Elite systems in the office right now that I've been able to pick up from retailers, and none of them are the 84-100 variant. They're all the 80-100 variant, so this is all I could test at the current moment. But to round out the specs, the Galaxy Book 4 Edge has 16 gigabytes of LPDDR5X memory coming in at 8,448 megatransfers per second. I do have the 14-inch variant. There is a 16-inch variant. Maybe that might make a difference in terms of thermal capacity, because this thing ran quite hot. We got close to the 90 to 94 degrees Celsius point on the chip many times during this testing, and it actually radiated quite well throughout the entire notebook. So the top of the keyboard was between 50 and 52 degrees Celsius during testing, and the keyboard where you put your fingers on the home row key could get up to 45 degrees Celsius during testing. So it's clear that there's heat dissipation going on through the chassis. So a bigger 16-inch variant might have more thermal headroom just because of how it's dissipating it through the system. It does have fans, but they don't get very loud, and it doesn't seem like they're moving a lot of heat either, because it's a very low wattage chip. But before I got into the games testing, I decided to just do some light CPU benchmarking to see where the Snapdragon X Elite chip lies, specifically when it's both hardwired as well as on battery power. And what's impressive is that it got very close. In Geekbench, it was at 2,776 single core with a 14298 multi-core. And then on battery, the single core score stayed very close at 2732. The multi-core dropped a little bit. That max frequency likely got hit a little bit, down to 13542, but very similar in terms of CPU performance when it's plugged in or on battery. The GPU synthetic benchmark that comes with Geekbench for both OpenCL and Vulkan, that one dropped a little bit more on battery than the CPU testing, but overall it looks like one of the things that has changed with the Copilot Plus update for Windows is that you are getting very similar performance whether you're plugged in or not, specifically thanks to the low power draw that the Snapdragon X Elite chips need. And we'll tell you, it took a long time to do all of this testing, a lot of manual input, a lot of me making it happen, but it'd be great to automate this. But in case you're looking to automate your security and compliance for your business, you should check out today's video sponsor. Today's video is sponsored by Vanta, the leading trust management platform. Whether you're starting or scaling your company's security program, demonstrating top-notch security practices and establishing trust is more important than ever. Vanta automates compliance for SOC 2, ISO 27001, and more, saving you time and money while helping you build your customers' trust. Plus, you can streamline security reviews by automating questionnaires and demonstrating your security posture with a customer-facing trust center, all powered by Vanta AI. Over 7,000 global companies like Atlassian, Flow Health, and Quora use Vanta to manage risk and improve security in real time. Via the link below or by scanning the QR code, you can get $1,000 off Vanta. That's $1,000 off Vanta by clicking the link below or scanning the QR code. Big thank you to Vanta for sponsoring today's video. So now let's get into the gaming benchmarks. I mentioned that we tried to test 15 different games across a whole swath of years that the games were released, as well as the difficulty to run them. And out of the 15 that we tried to test, 8 could simply not run at all. That's either due to the game not supporting ARM architecture, or one game specifically needed the AVX instruction set, which does not appear to be enabled when I tried to run the game. And out of the 7 games that did run out of this 15 game suite, most of them could not top 60 FPS. Now, you might think that I ran all of these games at the native resolution of the display, which happens to be a high 2880 by 1800, which looks fantastic. Very good pixel density with the OLED screen that's on the Galaxy Book 4 Edge, but I did not do that. I ran it at 720p in order to make sure that it could run at all. And I made sure that for every game, the settings were as low as they could possibly go. Textures decreased, quality settings on everything put to its bare minimum, and it still struggled. While the CPU appears to be very capable on the Snapdragon X Elite laptops, going toe-to-toe with what Apple has for their Apple Silicon or even what Intel and AMD have, it does not look like the integrated GPU that's on this, the Adreno chip, is any good. So let's go through the games step by step. Apex Legends did not run, ARM is not supported. Alan Wake 2, same story, did not run. Borderlands 3, the first game in this alphabetical list of games that did run, at 720p, very low. We managed to average 37.7 FPS. But it was not a very smooth experience. That's going to be a story for all of the other games I tell too. There is a lot of hiccuping and a lot of stuttering. The 1% FPS came to 5.8 and the 0.1% was 4.6. But talking about a very unsmooth gaming experience, let's move on to Counter-Strike 2. What a nightmare this was to run. Something that can run on a potato. It's been running on integrated GPUs on Intel for years, and those are not very good. Counter-Strike 2, 720p, lowest settings possible. We averaged 35.1 FPS, but as you can see, as I was playing the game, there are many moments where it just freezes. It doesn't actually run. My 0.1% and 1% lows were 0.4 FPS. This was difficult to play, could not actively engage in any sort of firefight in CS2. It was frustrating. I would never go back to it. I, for one, am not a snob when it comes to FPS on trying to play games. I played Team Fortress 2 at 20 FPS on very bad graphics back in 2008. I enjoy using low-end hardware that meets the bare minimum requirements in order to do it because that's all I could afford. In this situation, it is beyond that. It is unplayable. Cyberpunk 2077 was actually surprisingly okay at the Steam Deck preset at 720p. The average FPS was 21.3 with the 1% and 0.1% lows being quite close, so there wasn't a whole lot of stuttering. It was a very smooth experience, which is more of the playable experience that I'm talking about when it comes to low FPS. If back in my late high school days when this is all I would be able to get out of my hardware, I would be satisfied with how Cyberpunk played on this. I just wouldn't necessarily be happy with the $1,400 price tag that this thing starts at. Doom Eternal, oh boy, what a game that was. This one ran 720p low, 34.5 FPS average, not terrible, 16.5 FPS for the 1% low, 11.6 for the 0.1% low, playable, but the game looked like this. The textures broke, the game broke. It didn't really run in a way that was usable. Very, very wonky experience. 0 out of 10, do not recommend. Elden Ring did not run, does not support ARM. Fortnite, same story, did not run, does not support ARM. GTA 5, 720p lowest. This game that came out over a decade ago had our highest average FPS yet, coming in at 90.4. The 1% and 0.1% lows were pretty stuttery. It did have a lot of hiccups during the opening section of the game, but overall ran pretty okay. Helldivers 2 did not run, needs the AVX instruction set. Hitman, World of Assassinations, at 720p lowest settings. This one was a frustration because for multiple attempts, it would not run for the first 5 minutes, even though I was actually in the game. But then after I did get it working, the average FPS was quite good, coming in at 64.83 FPS, and the 1% lows were 30.4 and the 0.1% were 16.8. Horizon Forbidden West, a brand new AAA title ported over from Sony, did not run. Last of Us Part 1, same story, did not run. Returnal also did not run. And then The Witcher 3 at 720p lowest came in at a actually playable 51 FPS average, 30.7 on the 1% and 4.2 on the 0.1%. So a few hiccups here and there, but The Witcher 3 playable overall. Now, one of the things this points us to is that the Adreno GPU that is in these Snapdragon X Elite chips appears to be the weakest link of this entire operation. Synthetic benchmarks on the CPU perform very well. The NPU is at 45 tops, which is competitive with other thin and lights. The GPU is not even competitive with a Steam Deck. which you can pick up for $300 right now and play Linux games on an integrated GPU that is generations old at this point from AMD. Honestly, it is laughably bad how atrocious the performance was on the Adreno GPU, and is the biggest disappointment of this transition to Snapdragon on Windows. Additionally, Microsoft promised that they had their Prism emulator that was coming out that was supposed to allow for ARM to be translated to x86 and x64 instruction sets so that you could at least run certain things that otherwise aren't supported. It doesn't appear to be active for many games, and probably still has a way to go before you could just trust that your Snapdragon laptop is actually going to run whatever program you desire for it to run. And when it comes to how many games launched and how many games didn't, honestly, it's about on par with macOS, which makes some sense. However, Apple is doing a lot more now, specifically after their WWDC event, where they talked about how porting games over to macOS is going to be a little bit more of an improvement down the line. Maybe that might make it so that game developers have more support for ARM overall. If it's coming out for macOS, maybe we'd also see support for ARM on Windows here. But overall, this was a very disappointing showing from the Snapdragon X Elite chip. Theoretically, the Snapdragon X Plus shouldn't perform too much worse. We're not really CPU bound in any of these instances, and the GPU is supposed to be close to identical. But I would not plan on playing esports titles on this. I would not plan on playing lightweight games on this. It is just a rough experience overall. Do not buy this if you have any interest in gaming on the go. It is not going to be able to support you for that. Maybe it might change as the time goes on. Support for the ARM architecture gets a little bit more robust, and I'd be open to revisiting this at some point in the future. But as it stands right now, yikes. In case you're interested in us checking out more Snapdragon chips on Copilot Plus laptops, be sure to get subscribed. We have a few more videos coming out with the various different notebooks that we have around here. Let me know if you want me to do a deep dive between this and the competing Intel and AMD equivalents that are out on the market right now. I wanted to see how this stood in a vacuum, which is not very good, but in case you're interested in how it performs against the competition, let me know and maybe we can do a follow-up video.